On the table here you have some coloured marker pens. This will be useful if you're using black or dark coloured felt because they'll show up. Metallic pens are quite good for that. Also allows you to do some decoration if you like. There is pom-poms. These are very easy to get hold of and they come in a variety of different sizes. So you can get any size that you fancy for this. The standard one that they normally come in multicolour packs are usually the right size for the Weepuls. Some offcuts of felt from other projects. If you saw the fuzzy dice video, then you'll recognise some of those colours. That's only really needed if you're doing some different designs. Some googly eyes, or woogly eyes that jiggle about anyway. Again, available in a variety of colours and sizes and packets. Some bridal or millinery flower stamens. This is what gives the Weepul its characteristic little antenna. A notepad and a pen. You can use any paper you like. I just happen to be using a notepad. Some sticky back felt. That's for the feet of your Weepul. A good sharp pair of scissors. Some Yoo-hoo glue, which you can use hot glue. It does work, but the Yoo-hoo glue isn't as messy. It does take a tiny bit longer, but you don't end up with all those strings and it doesn't go yellowy and discoloured with time. What we're aiming for is one of these little guys. And they look very simple to make because they are. You used to be able to buy these a lot easier. You'd find them in every single gift shop. Every single kind of day trip place would have them. They'd very often have ribbons on them advertising a business. You'd sometimes get them with little plastic hard hats, all sorts of things. But this is how it starts. This is your basic, bog standard Weepul. First thing you want to do is get your paper and your pen and one of your pom-poms. Now, when you get these out of the packet, they're usually quite squished. So if you roll them in your hands, you can get them back round again. They also pick up fluff from each other, and sometimes you'll get a long bit like that. So just trim that off and you're fine. So this is your basic body, and that gives you a rough idea of the size. They're not all entirely uniform. Some of them are slightly smaller and slightly bigger, but you'll know what feels right when you actually get some pom-poms in your hand. Now, I've already made a little template for the feet, and again, Weepuls traditionally have little feet. I don't have a die to stamp out the pattern, unfortunately. The way I got to this design is I put my pom-pom down on the paper and I draw around the pom-pom, but you want the main part of the foot here to be no larger than the outer circumference of the pom-pom, otherwise it will look too big. And then your feet you draw on at the front. It's a lot of trial and error. So that gives us our rough circle. You don't need to be very precise at this point. You can tidy this all up afterwards. Use a compass and such if you wish. And we know that the feet want to come out a little bit from the base in this sort of a shape. And then you want to divide that up if you want the toes, or you can just leave it plain like that. And I'll put the little toes in. There we go. Fold your paper in half so you have half of your design showing. And then cut it out. Now, if you're one of those people who can't be trusted with scissors, if you can find a responsible adult, let me know, because I've not found one. If not, you'll just have to chance it. And then when you open up, you have your foot pattern. Like I say, there is a bit of trial and error involved here because you can already see the first mistake, which is it's too big. Because when I put the pom-pom on there, that's very, very big feet. However, it doesn't really matter because maybe you want big feet on your Weepul. I don't. I just want little ones like this. I'm going to now trace this a few times onto the felt, and then we can start building. Having made use of my template, I now have a dozen feet, and before we do the next step, we just need to pick out the colours that we want. And the key with Weepuls is to muddle your colours up, so make sure that the feet and the pom-pom don't match. Then you'll get the most convincing ones. Nice little assortment. Before you glue them down, remember, give them a roll so they're nice and round again. And then you just put some glue on the foot. And if you pinch the pom-pom, you'll feel the middle of it is a little bit harder where it gets denser in the middle. So you want to be pinching it so that you can feel that inside the pom-pom. And then give it a good squidge down on the glue. And that will hold that in place for you. This one's a bit squished. If they're very squished, sometimes you have to give them a bit of a fluff out. Poor thing. Also, if you've got, like this one has, a bit of a bald spot on one side, put that on the bottom. It's a good way of hiding it. You will end up with fluff everywhere doing this too. That's unavoidable. Some would say part of the fun. I've just realised I should make that one on a black base, because then I'll have one for the princess. Just leave these to dry. If you've used hot glue for this instead, then these will be ready to go for the next stage straight away. The Yoo-hoo takes a little bit longer. Also, if you find that the felt or the pom-pom has soaked up all of the glue and it hasn't stuck, don't worry about it. Just put a little bit more glue on and stick them back together and you'll probably get it on the second try. Now that the glue has dried, you can pick these up and their feet don't drop off. It's time to put the antennas on. Don't be tempted to do the eyes first. You want to do the eyes last, and I'll show you why when we've got all these antennas in. So these are like, I think they're done with a piece of string which is then dipped in paint. I think that's how they make them. But of course it would take a long time to make them by hand yourself. You just need one per Weepul, and you want to fold it in half and just press the end together. When you get the Weepul, you can separate all the fluff to get to the middle of the pom-pom. And you want your antennas to go in about in the middle at the top of your pom-pom. don't need very much glue, just a little tiny dot. And then you just put the antenna into where the glue is and close the fluff up. And there you go. So I shall do the rest of these and then we'll do the eyes. This is probably one of the fiddlier parts of the whole process. It really does give them their character. On this one, you can even see how the pom-poms are made. You've got a little band in the middle there, and that's what all the fibres are put through, and then it's trimmed, and because of the way the material is, it just springs back into a nice round shape. One full complement of Weepuls with antennas. The nice thing is they sort of jiggle around, so if you have these stuck on your car dashboard, for example, they'll just bobble around along with the eyes as you're going down the road. It's kind of cute. Now, the reason that we do all of this before the eyes is attaching the pom-pom to the felt base and putting the antennas in affects the shape of the pom-pom itself. If you start with the eyes, you can end up with them being in the wrong place. And when I say in the wrong place, they do move around quite a bit. You can see on this guy, you know, you can squidge him around quite a lot, and the eyes do change location. But you want them to be roughly in the right place in relation to the feet and the antenna. Otherwise they look a bit odd. I have a variety of different eye sizes here, and these are all sticky backed ones, and I do use the largest size that's in this pack. But, you know, you can use any size that you personally want. I wouldn't go for the really tiny ones. I find these ones are about the right size. They look right for how these looked way back when. Usually the glue on the eyes is strong enough to actually stick to the pom-pom. You shouldn't need to use the Yoo-hoo glue for that. The tricky part is getting the eyes in the right place. But you've got two reference points now. You've got the antennas at the top and the feet at the bottom, so you know roughly where the middle is on the face, if you like. You don't need to use a lot of force. They just stick on. Probably the most difficult part is getting the paper backing off. And it's as simple as that. One little Weepul, ready to be stuck wherever you want it to go. All you'll need to do is peel the sticky tape off the base so that you can actually glue it down. If you want to make them look like the ones that had an advertising ribbon on, or add any kind of ribbon really, put that on either before you put the pom-pom on or before you glue it down onto your surface. And of course you can customize these and turn them into anything you want at all. In fact, let's show you a couple of variations on this adorable theme. Been experimenting with some ideas, and this is where your coloured markers come in handy. I've already had a bit of a test on this sheet, And I wanted, because it is the season, wanted to make a little bat. I thought that would be fun. So I've made some wings, and after a bit of experiment I found that it needs to be two separate wings that go into the sides of the pom-pom. You can't just make them in one piece, it doesn't sit properly. And I'm using just plain felt for this. This isn't the sticky back stuff, because both sides will be visible. So I just need to draw around my template. I'll do it on this side so that I know what I'm cutting out. And of course we will also need a little base. But I mean, bats do have feet. They don't have Weepul feet. So all I've done here is drawn out some circles, and I'm just going to cut a circle. So you won't actually see the base on this one. I do have another use for these circles as well. I'll come to that in a moment. Right, that's that. Now chop out the wings. So we have our little base and our little wings, and I have some black pom-poms. Weepuls were usually in very bright colours, so you didn't really see black ones unless it was a special promotional type one. So if you want them to look more authentic, it's always best to use sort of bright colours like this, where there's a lot of contrast and they're not necessarily complementary to one another, and that gives you the most convincing sort of a look. Keep it plain as well, so avoid glitters and that sort of thing if you're going for the nostalgia. So, as before, we take our pom-pom, find the middle of it, and just squidge it down onto our base. But where this one differs is putting the wings on. Now these wings I have accepted are probably not going to sit even because of the nature of the materials. And that's okay. We'll do our best. It's always a good idea when you're using Yoo-hoo glue to keep putting the lid back on, because otherwise it will leak out everywhere. Ooh, nearly glued myself to it. Now, I'm not giving this one antenna because I don't think it's going to work. Do you know what though? Let's see what it looks like with antennas on, and if it looks okay, then we'll do that. No, I think it'd be better without. Of course, if I change my mind in the future, I can always put some in. So this one needs some eyes, just to finish him off. I'm going to go a size down on this. This is going to look very silly, and I'm okay with that. Don't take Weepuls seriously. There is nothing serious to take here. There we go, one little bat Weepul. Do you know what? He's going to make great friends with the spider Weepul, because you can just have fun with this and just make silly little creatures, and I love this little spider. Not everybody does, but I think he's adorable. So they'll be best buddies. Now then, I have some white ones, and I can make use of these. But I need to make one other thing. When you're doing round bases, just have a hunt around for anything that's really the right size. This is the trim ring from a side repeater from the Princess. which, you know, I just happen to have in my room. But it's the great thing about it is it's exactly the right size for what I'm doing here. I only need 2 of these because I'm only making 2. So what are these other black discs for? I shall show you. And like the eyes, it's just a paper backing, and then these have a glue film on them. Do you know what? I think that's a bit big. Never mind, it's still sticky. There we go, that works. Yeah, trim this one down as well. You figured out what these are yet? I think these are great. It's a brilliant idea. I'm a genius. Some little eyes. They just need one last detail, I think. Some of you are already groaning watching this because you know what I'm going to say in a minute. Well, I went a bit mother-in-law's hat, but oh well. Not to worry. Sheeple. Yeah, I'm not even a little bit sorry for that one. I've got an idea. The way I made the spider base here originally was lollipop sticks, and I just laid a lollipop stick down and then rotated it and kept going until I had all the legs I wanted. Which is 8, because spiders have 8 legs. Which is funny because a lot of the time you get kind of cute spider things and they've only got 6 legs. What's that about? This one is quite material hungry compared to the others. Quite a large base. I can be a bit organic with this one as well. I don't need it to be symmetrical. Right, there we go. Got a red blob. Good for that one. Right then. Kind of wish I had some larger googly eyes than I have, but we'll make do with what we've got for this particular idea. There we go, a couple of octopus. I think they're cute. I still have some left over though. All these colours I've got here. What to do with these, I wonder. I think I know what I'll do with black ones. This one's very experimental. I have no idea if this will work. But there's only one way to find out, and that's by doing it. So obviously needs some little antennas. And it needs some eyes. For copyright reasons, that's Colleen the caterpillar. I have no idea where that's going to end up, but because the entire bottom is the sticky back felt, that will go over any sort of curvy surface I want it to go over. Right, just those two black pom-poms. And I think I know what to do with those. Oh, brilliant. The lens from the inside is just about the right diameter. So there's a top tip for you. If you're wanting to make circles for these, all you need is some Austin Princess parts. This will use up all of the pom-poms, so I have none left over, which is brilliant. I know a couple of people that have been following me outside of YouTube have expressed an interest in having their own Weepul. So you'll now know how to make them. And how easy they are as well. But I thought, since I have some white sheeple, how about I make some black sheeple? Here's the plural of sheeple. Sheeple or sheeples. Answers on a postcard. Two little black sheeple. And that's a whole flock of sheeples. Well, I hope you've had fun watching me make these. I hope you have a go yourself. They're very silly. They're brilliant sort of rainy day stuff. And especially if you remember these from back in the day, then there's a good nostalgia hit here. And have some fun with them. You're not just restricted to doing your standard ones. You can do whatever takes your fancy in any form and any colour that you want.
Every 1,000 years, I test each life system in the universe. I visit it with mysteries, earthquakes, unpredicted eclipses, strange craters in the wilderness. These are taken as natural and judge that system.